wanted to bring Frida here because she has an important story to tell you about the history of her country. And, you know, when I first met her, I was introduced to her as a leader of the democracy movement in Togo, which is one of the countries that you'll see on the map in the back of the room. And you gave an amazing speech at the Oslo Freedom Forum several years ago, you know, but like money wasn't part of the speech. And I didn't even know that it was part of your struggle until later we randomly started talking about this. And I decided to try and interview you for an essay that I was working on. And you told me, no, like money is the reason we started revolting in the first place. And she told me that the first post-colonial leader of her country was actually assassinated because he tried to make monetary freedom for her country. So I would love for you to tell the story of Togo and why financial freedom is important for the worldwide human rights and democracy movement.
Thank you so much, Alex. Frida did well by providing a very good background onto the colonial tie we have with France, because my country, Togo, was also a colony of France. Initially, Togo was a German colony, and eventually, after Germany lost World War I, Togo was placed under the French mandate, and French continued the colonization. In 1958, the Togolese people started revolting, demanding independence, and then they eventually pushed the United Nations to organize an election in Togo, and they voted majoritarily for their independence. 3 years down the line, the first president of Togo, Sylvanus Olympio, called for monetary independence because as Togo, including 14 other French colonies, were using a currency that was created by the French government in order to continue maintaining us under its bondage. Because of that currency, the French government has 85% of our national reserves in its bank. Our gold is in the French bank. And if our countries are going through an economic downturn, they can't even print more money. They have to borrow money from the French government with interest. In addition to that, the French government has the right to, has actually the priority of choice when our countries want to export natural resources. We must sell it to France first, and it's only if France that has declined it that we can sell it to another nation. The president of Togo, who was an economist, felt was unfair, and he called for the creation of the Togolese currency on December 12, 1962. 2 months later, in the night of January 12 to 13, 1963, he was assassinated by former colonial soldiers of the French colonial army. The regime, or the soldier that took over after Olympio was assassinated, ruled Togo for 38 years, and his son has been in power now for the past 16 years, making us the oldest military regime in Africa. Now, I come from a family of activists that have been, since the generation of my grandfather, been resisting against this regime, which has sent my grandfather, then my father to prison for years, and I myself to exile as I can go back to Togo. So when I told Alex that the monetary independence is the beginning of our struggle in Togo, is because our president was killed because of his desire to liberate us from a colonial currency. Now, how does the Bitcoin revolutionize everything? Today, Togo is ranked 3rd in Africa and 9 in the world on the Chain Analysis Bitcoin Adoption Index, making us one of the countries using Bitcoin more than any other. The Togolese people are defying the usage of the CFA currency. That is the number one thing. The second thing is that the government of Togo, being an authoritarian regime, has a full control of how we use our money. And when you are a dissident or you are a family member of a dissident, they can freeze your account and seize your money. Because of that reason, my dad hasn't had a bank account in the past 40 years, because back in the 70s, his bank account was frozen and his money was confiscated. And I remember telling him about Bitcoin some time ago, and he was so passionate about it because he felt like at least this could protect him from the government controlling his money. And millions of others are in the same situation. When we were protesting for change in Togo from 2017, I was among the young leaders and many others calling for democratic change in Togo, which eventually led hundreds of thousands of people in the streets for the first time in our history, demanding an end to dictatorship. Of course, we were met with massive repression. Many were arrested, many others were killed, and many, many others left the country like myself. But in that process, it was the money that the diaspora was sending to us on the ground that helped us organize a protest, provide healthcare resources for those who were injured, and also provide legal resources for those who were arrested. The government of Togo, realizing the power of the diaspora, decided to to seize actually the account of the movement on the ground, and bringing in money became difficult. So we had to send money through our neighboring countries and then smuggle the money in cash to our country. That was not sustainable. But Bitcoin is revolutionizing all of that, because now we can send money directly to the country without the government controlling how we're doing it and who has it and how it happens. And in this process, we are actually decolonizing our country, which is why I call the Bitcoin the currency of decolonization, because we were lucky to have a political decolonization from France back in 1960, but we were never able to obtain the monetary decolonization. We continue to keep us under French control, and the French government has been supporting the military regime in Togo like it is in the many other Francophone African countries. But now with the Bitcoin, we have the resource to be able to change that and to get to an effective decolonization. Thank you.